Am I the a-hole for refusing to vacation with my disabled friend anymore? I, F30s, have a friend Ashley, F30s. Ashley and I have been friends since we were 13. We drifted apart after high school but stayed in touch. Ashley is disabled. She has fibromyalgia. We planned to go on a short vacation together to the city, which was Ashley's idea. We planned this over a year in advance to stay for 3 nights. The actual vacation was okay, but I found being around Ashley stressful. She extremely overpacked. She brought 7 outfits, different types of hair dryers, and a bunch of other stuff that just wasn't needed, and was always complaining about how heavy her bags are. She insisted on going for long walks through the city but then would get tired and say we need to get a taxi home as she can't walk back. The last straw for me was that Ashley had a full-on meltdown at the station. I walked her to the station. I wasn't getting the train back. We live in completely different areas. We got to the desk and she asked the staff if there was a wheelchair available she could use as she was struggling to walk any further to get to her platform. They said they were all being used and asked if she booked assistance, and she hadn't, and they told her a chair should be available in around an hour. Ashley lost her cool and yelled at them and said that she's going to miss her train, and she sat on the floor. I tried to calm her down but there was just no use. She was very insulting and called them names. It was so embarrassing. I stayed with Ashley and eventually the manager arrived with a chair. He helped Ashley and she went home. 2 days after we got home, Ashley asked me if I'd be down for a similar vacation next year. I told her no thanks. I tried to explain to her that I think after our experience it's better if we don't vacation together. Ashley is now angry with me and said I'm being ableist, but I struggle to put up with how disorganized she is in regards to her own needs. Am I the a-hole for not loving my future kids? I, 35F, had been with my boyfriend Tyler, 38M, for 6 months. 2 days ago, he introduced me to his kids from his last marriage. They seem like very sweet kids. They're Ava, 11F, and Lexi, 15F. We had dinner together and they were very sweet, funny and charming. I like them. It was nice to meet them and I'm pretty sure they like me too. Yesterday Tyler and I were at a restaurant and the topic of Ava and Lexi came up. Tyler talked about how much the kids liked me and how he was excited for me to be their mom. I know it has been 6 months but I haven't thought about marriage with Tyler yet. I told him that seemed nice because I didn't really know how to respond. He looked at me funny and asked, "Do you love the kids?" I was confused and I told him no. He was shocked. I explained that I had only met Ava and Lexi once, I barely knew them. They're sweet kids and all, but I don't consider them my kids yet. He went off on me and made a scene yelling that I'm a horrible person to not love my own future kids. I feel kind of bad because I feel like he has a point. These might become my kids someday but it's not someday yet. I met them one time. Today Tyler called me and apologized for blowing up at me. He asked if I really meant that I didn't love them. I explained that I thought his kids were lovely but I just don't love them yet. I literally met them 2 days ago, one time. How am I supposed to love someone just because they are my boyfriend's kids? He hung up on me. I am supposed to love my boyfriend's kids, but that would feel like a chore, forcing myself to love 2 kids that I don't love. That sounds awful, I know, but I don't know how else to explain it. I don't hate them, I really do like them, and there's nothing wrong with them at all. They're lovely and perfect kids, but I don't know anything about them other than their names, ages and favorite movies and foods. There is nothing for me to love about them if I don't even know their middle name or favorite color. I'm sorry. I don't know them, I don't love them. I'm sure I can love them over time, if I see them for more than 2 hours. My boyfriend is very mad at me and says I am awful for not loving my kids. My dad says I will be a horrible future mom and is thinking he gave birth to a crazy person since I do not love them. I'm so confused. I never said I didn't like them and I've emphasized this multiple times, but I don't love them and I don't know what is wrong with that. Am I the a-hole for causing a mass exodus from my uncle's barbecue? My, F32, uncle, M71, and his wife, F69, recently hosted a family barbecue at their home. This is normally a rotating thing so everyone in the family takes turns hosting. My uncle is a very difficult man to get along with, and I mostly went because it is important to my mom, F66. He is very rigid in his beliefs and will make it very clear to you if you have done something to offend him. Once that has happened, there is no chance for redemption regardless of whether you are family, friends, or a stranger. While at the barbecue, everyone was standing around and my daughter, F6, helped herself to a banana from the fruit bowl. Now obviously, you shouldn't take anything that doesn't belong to you without asking, but she is 6 and manners are still being learned. Not saying she was right in this. That being said, my uncle lost his mind. He called her a thieving brat and started threatening to call the cops. I stepped in and he told me to pack up my stuff and go because he didn't want thieves in his home. He told me that neither myself, my daughter, or my husband, M33, would ever be welcome again because clearly this was a taught behavior. I was furious. I told my uncle that this intolerance was why he has no friends, and why we only visit his home out of obligation. I told him that without my mom's family values, there wouldn't be anyone at the barbecue. In the middle of this, he pulled out his phone to call Mr. Police and ask how a little girl would survive in prison. My daughter was beside herself, so I gathered her and my husband, and we left. Apparently, after we left, my uncle was ranting and raving, and eventually my cousin, F24, not his child, told my uncle that he was lucky he didn't try with someone else in the family because I was still polite in what I said. She told him that she refused to eat at the home of someone who thought it is okay to bully a child. As my cousin left, apparently quite a few people followed, and suddenly it was just my uncle and his wife left. His wife has been calling me telling me that I humiliated him in his own home and I can't expect his generation to be PC. She has also told me that he has been moping ever since because he feels like an outcast in the family, and that I shouldn't have been so harsh. I am glad I stood up for my daughter, but I never intended for everyone to leave as a result of the banana. Now I wonder if I was too much? Am I the a-hole for pulling out of mine and my dad's tradition because my stepbrother was going so my dad cancelled it then? My dad and I have always done this overnight trip once a year where we go to my grandparents' cabin and hang out. This started before I can even remember. There are photos of us there, just the two of us. Mom didn't come when she was alive and we kept it up after she died. Last year Dad married Sarah. Sarah has a son Jake, 8. I'm 15. So Dad and I had planned our trip for this year and then Jake asked if he could come. Dad told Jake this was just for me and him, and that we could do something else another time. Sarah said it wouldn't kill us to let Jake join and since it was father/son time, he should be there since Dad is the other father figure Jake has. So Dad said he could come and asked me to be okay with it. I told him I wasn't and that there are other things he could join in for but this was always our thing. Sarah said I could let my little brother join. I waited a few days and the plans were still Jake comes. So I told my dad I wasn't going anymore and that I didn't want Jake to intrude on that but since I had no say, I was taking myself out of the equation. Sarah heard me say this and said I couldn't pull out because Jake wanted time with me as badly as he wanted time with Dad. I told her I didn't want the cabin trip to include Jake and it was never meant to include anyone else. She asked Dad if he was seriously going to let me just decide to pull out almost last minute. He said it wasn't going to be any good if he had to force me to go. The very next day Dad decided to drop the cabin trip. Jake was upset and Sarah was furious at me and she said this was all my fault and I was such a spoiled little brat. She said Jake wanted to join us and be included and seen as a part of the family, one of the boys, and I shit all over him. I told her Jake goes bowling with my dad once a month, that Dad helps him document bugs. He has his own things with Dad and he joins us for other stuff. That I should be allowed one tradition that has been there for years and has always just been for me and Dad. Sarah said I was still spiteful and hurt an 8-year-old. I should also add that Dad has told me we'll do the trip just us around Halloween because he knows I was right and it should be kept for just us. Am I the a-hole for leaving the table after what my father-in-law said? My 26F husband, 29M, and I were invited at my in-laws for dinner yesterday. Everything was going great until my mother-in-law brought up my husband's player phase in high school. My mother-in-law was just jokingly being like honestly, him in high school, I'd never thought he'd actually settle down with somebody and my father-in-law was like yeah, even less with someone like you. I asked him what he meant by that. Both my mother-in-law and husband were then like please, no he's gonna mess up way. My father-in-law said well you weren't exactly his type in high school, you know? My husband tried to make him stop after that but my father-in-law added not saying you weren't pretty enough or anything like that, you just wouldn't have caught his eyes. I got up the table and went to the bathroom. I was not even in there for 5 minutes that my husband knocked and told me we were leaving. Once we were home, my husband received a text from his mom saying that my reaction was childish and disrespectful and that we wouldn't be invited again until I apologized. My husband replied that I'd only apologize if my father-in-law apologized first. He didn't got an answer but his sister texted me that I needed to apologize ASAP because I was putting my husband's relation with his parents at risk over a misunderstanding.